Okay, let's get started. So first off, I'm really happy to be able to meet in person again, some of the conferences, and so I'm really grateful for ClickWorks and Square Moon for organizing this conference and having me as a speaker, so thank you. Today, I'm going to talk about elements for building great solutions. I have a lot of years of experience, both from when I lived in Montreal, then Toronto, Arizona, California, Dresden for 2 years. A little bit of a interruption there, but then we're back in the US. So my name is Vincenzo Menanno. I'm with Beeswax. And get this to work here. Oh, come on. It was working, but now it's not working. Oh, there we go. So my title changed. Okay, I'm just going to do it from here. My title changed about 1.5 years ago. I was Director of FileMaker Development, and now I have the title of Chief Innovation Officer. I basically do the same thing. I work with really talented people, and I get them to do everything I want to do, and they do it for me. So it's really a great job. I love hiking, biking, traveling, architecture, precision engineering, sharp knives, yes, and parking backwards. I have 2 wonderful kids, and oops, 2 wonderful kids. Oh, there we go. And they are getting older very quickly. My son is a 15-year-old. My daughter will soon be 11. So they're wonderful kids that bring me a lot of inspiration in my life. So today is going to be like a different talk than I normally do. It's a little bit, sometimes I'm more like, oh, wow, my favorite feature was PSOS, FileMaker 13, my favorite number. So that was like, oh my God, all the things we can do with PSOS. And now we have all kinds of really exciting other things we can do. But it's not a technical talk. It's more of a inspiration, looking back, kind of wanting to inspire you also to think about opportunities to improve things, how to look at, what kind of areas you can look at to make changes in the way you deal with your clients to help you build better solutions. So this is when my father arrived in Montreal. It's a telegram from Italy. And you can't read it, but up there stamped on it, February 1959, February 23rd, 1959, 9:35 p.m. And sending a telegram to my mother, who already lived in Montreal, that he would be arriving. If you ever lived in Montreal, February is a very cold month to arrive. Very cold. This is a picture of, so my father died in 2007. My mom died in 2008. This is my mom's home just before she passed away, and I will bring back this picture and talk about it in the context of this presentation later. So just kind of take a mental image of that. In DevCon of 2019, I presented being an optimist in a pessimistic world. Today, I'm constantly dissatisfied, and I would like you also to be constantly dissatisfied in a kind of a positive way. All right? This is one of my favorite clips on YouTube. I always tend to show it at events, but I'll let you guys watch it. It's one of my favorite clips. It's from Phenomenon, the movie with John Travolta. And it's an interview between an interviewer, because he gets struck by some bolt of lightning or something, and he all of a sudden has these superpowers. He can do all kinds of things. And so he's being tested. And I love to show this clip to new clients that we work with, because it kind of breaks the ice. It also shows how sometimes in our world we have to be very specific, and it's called Specifics Bob. And so it's a great clip. I invite you to watch it at your leisure. So this journey that we're going to take, I was also going to call this session Kitchens, Cars, and Coding. but I didn't know if that would convey what I'm trying to say. But I will cover some of these areas that I'm going to talk about in these categories. And in the end, what I'd like you to remember is inspiration that you get from this, some habits that you can instill, empathy that you can bring into your conversations with your clients, and attention. Attention is a very interesting thing these days. And so first off, kitchens. A lot of us spend time in kitchens. And so the kind of reflection that a kitchen has on your workspace, basically, right? So it's, light, it's organized, it's functional, right? There's labels to organize things, so things are nicely organized and ordered, you know what they are, etc. Again, lighting, attention to detail, grouping, right? So I think sometimes, like I show these through the examples of, you can put attention on anything you do. So you can take the forks and the spoons and just throw them in there, or you can organize them like this. We once stayed at a Airbnb in Switzerland, and the one on the right was the way they organized the cutlery in the drawers. It's like, that's interesting, that's nice. Someone paid attention to that, right? So it's a little details like that, like if you pay attention, you'll notice them, okay? There's a lot of little details in life. And I tell my kids, one of my favorite quotes is, the way a person does one thing is the way they do everything. And my kids look at me and they say, what does that mean? So like, for example, I can take this thing and I can just throw it, right? And I don't care where it lands, right? Or I can orderly place it, nicely organized, folded, take the time to do it. And if someone sees your workspace, they'll say, oh, wow, this person takes the time to place things nicely, etc., right? So it's the way you do one thing is representative of the way you do anything. It's almost like, someone sees you how you act some way. It's a representation of your manner. So anyway, it's something I always tell my kids. Hopefully one day they'll get it. It'll click. So I always had a hard time with this, and naming conventions. So naming conventions, it's like, okay, well, whatever you want to call it. The way you name it, or is it uppercase, or the character case or whatever? Is it the way it's named? Is it ID, or is it PK or FK or whatever? Right? All these subtleties, and some people get really bent out of shape about naming conventions and all that. And oftentimes we focus on just the name, right? And what I find interesting is, because I love to live in the data visualization world, and I love to live in the FileMaker world. So these are the two worlds I inhabit. In the data visualization world, and in computer software, there are two things. Naming things is hard, and cache invalidation is hard. Those are the two hardest things in computer programming, supposedly. In the data visualization world, you see things in different ways. And so there's a whole site where you can look at these pre-attentive attributes, as they call them. And you can look at things in terms of, like, is it longer? Is it thicker? What's, like the shape of it, the size of it, the enclosure, is it grouped? Color and intensity, all these things matter, right? So for me, I never realized this until, like, maybe that's the thing I get hung up on. I get hung up on the fact that there's not enough of these in our work. Like, I love that we have folders and scripts. I wish we had them in fields, so group things and all this, right? But if you can think of this, sometimes even when you design systems for clients, you can bring some of these things that you learn in other domains to bring to bear into your solutions. So I invite you to explore what's there. This is a FileMaker graph. I'm sorry. It's I think who is it? Kate, do you have a session about the? Not a session, but we have a meetup tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. So if you want to see more things like this, go to that session. Let me just show you a quick video of this so you kind of get a feel of how you would work in this graph. Okay, this is at 2 times the speed. Okay, so someone is, I think they're zooming out to get the big picture, and you get the big picture very quickly. I would not love to work in this system. It goes on for 3 minutes, but I'm not gonna put you through it. Okay, so every time you zoom out, you get this wonderful data visualization effect. It's beautiful, right? So let me show you how far it goes. Okay, this is at 4%, and yeah, and it's still rendering, I think. Yeah, so wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right. Again, I would not love to work in this system. But however, when FileMaker 7 came out, people were connecting table occurrences left, right, and center. They didn't have any kind of conventions or ideas. I remember when Mike Harris, who was part of Dig FM, he started exploring it. He was one of the first persons to coin the phrase table occurrence groups. And he was saying, yeah, maybe you should make groups and constellations and all this. And that was really interesting thinking. And he was also often kind of a forward thinker. I'll remember Mike, he used to say things like, when I go to meetings, I never do any of the talking. I just let people talk all the time. I just listen and listen for days and days and weeks. And then I formulate some ideas, and then I start making my opinions and start asking questions. But listening is very important. Listening is very important. Contrast that graph versus this. This is a table occurrence graph in Spectra 7. Okay, it's nicely organized, things kind of by groups and all that. And then and this is the table occurrence graph in 8. So as you move forward in time, right, you'll find maybe better ways to simplify. Maybe I don't need that many table occurrences. I think one of the things I remember having these conversations with Will Baker at Beeswax when we were first starting, and Will is a very talented FileMaker developer. And I remember there's always this hesitation, like the tendency with FileMaker is like, oh, I can jump in and solve the problem. I can do it. I know what I'm doing. Right? I'm going to make another table occurrence and then write a script and then get that data from the table, the relationship, and and then you have this. Detritus or debris left over, right? And then you don't clean up because you found a better way and you keep moving forward, right? It's called technical debt. And I remember Will and I used to say, we could write another table occurrence, but maybe we could do a find. Maybe we could do SQL or maybe we'll search it or something like that. So you start looking for different ways and you start weighing the pros and cons of each of those approaches, right? It's like, that's more table occurrences. I don't know if I want to be burdened with that. So you want to consider a lot of options before you act, because what you're left with is what you have to basically leave a legacy behind. And I sometimes get these emails from Ted, and I saw this one that it was all about basically attention, and it's like, oh, that's fascinating. And this quote caught my eye. The CEO of Netflix said, "Our biggest competitors are Facebook, YouTube, and sleep." Okay, so in this world, there's no more. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to watch TV. I used to come home from school, watch TV. Everybody watched Get Smart. You go to school next morning. Hey, did you see Get Smart yesterday? And then yeah, and you talk about it. It's common, shared, social fabric of growing up. Everybody kind of grows up with Ed Sullivan, Get Smart, whatever. And we had only 4 TV channels, 2 in English, 2 in French. And then, fast forward to the, late 70s, 80s, cable, 200 channels. Who has the time to watch 200 channels of TV? Then you had the box to record the movies that you never watched. And now you have streaming, whatever, you have YouTube videos. I mean, you are inundated with a plethora of things that grab your attention. And by the way, when you are in meetings with clients, you and them are paying attention, hopefully, to each other. You're paying attention to what they're saying, what they're asking, and hopefully they're paying attention to what you're giving them feedback. So attention is a very rare commodity, and you have to treat it with respect. So, and then the other thing is when I bring up the point of clients, which I find really interesting, our role as FileMaker developers is kind of exciting if you think about it. Sometimes you can get to, like, you work for different clients, so one day you'll show up and you'll be taking the role as a, pizza delivery order person. You have an app for them, they're taking pizzas and ordering pizzas. Next day you'll go to another client and you're doing tax, reports, and they're in finance and stuff. It's almost like the role of an actor. It's very rewarding. You're not showing up and you're doing the same friggin' job every day, So it's a very changing, dynamic opportunity. And I often say to people who look to work in FileMaker, I say, if you're looking to just be a programmer and you want to be given like inputs and outputs, like, oh, these are the inputs, give me the outputs, and that's what you like, maybe FileMaker is not for you. Because there's a lot of psychology, listening, understanding how they work, what they like, what they don't like. So sometimes people can't balance all those things. They're just like, oh, it's too many inputs. And some people are really good at it. They enjoy it, So, so that's, like, I want to tell you another experience about, how we transform some situation for building momentum for some clients that we work with. For the longest time, we had this one client where we meet once a week. We had a 1-hour meeting. We had 5 of our team meet with that client. And that client is super, super busy, super busy. And they're also tasked with the task to build this new system. So we meet once a week with them. At a certain point in a year, they get even more busy. As they say in German, uber busy, So like they get super busy and they don't have time for us. They're canceling meetings. So we want to get their solution built. We need answers to our questions. We don't have time to meet with them. They skip 1 week, they skip another week. It's like now you got like 1 week, you got maybe 1-2 weeks, 2 meetings a month. You're not getting answers, you're not making progress. So we decided at one point, change that dynamic, We said to the client, we said, hey, why don't one person or 2 people meet, and we meet every day for 10 minutes, and we go through the tickets, and we just say, hey, what's most urgent today? Did you review this? If you haven't, let's review it right now. So you walk with them through it, take 10 minutes out of your day, 15 minutes. That dynamic changed everything. The project started all of a sudden to gain more momentum. We got to the finish line. The client was happy. Things were happening. Developers had all these tickets showing up with what do you call I guess you call it the Scrum Master, whatever, the person who project manages it, to review it with the clients, make sure that the description is right. So as a developer, you show up, you open up your Jira box or whatever, and you see like your tickets. Okay, I got this to do today, this to do today. You didn't even show up at the meeting. If you have any clarification, you go to the project manager. He'll tell you a little bit more detail. If you don't have enough detail, then you have to go back to the client. But that dynamic changed everything for this project. And so rely on tools, fewer people in meetings sometimes can be helpful. Do a lot of listening, ask a lot of questions, pay attention to details. Be organized, be prepared. Okay, so I'm going to switch to cars now, the theme of cars. And I'm fascinated with Tesla. I'm just fascinated with Tesla because I listen to different podcasts and I watch what they're doing and all this, right? Just really interesting. And this one YouTuber said Tesla has 3 main objectives: to increase the performance and efficiency of their vehicles, to make it easier to manufacture, and then never be satisfied with what you have. Always be striving for better results for number 1 and 2. Okay, so even though our field, there's always some, new feature, new function, new whatever, And if you stay stagnant and not see like, how can this impact our clients? Like, perform script on server, my favorite feature, came along. It's like, hey, should maybe we use it? What benefit could that do? I mean, it changed a lot of things for us, right? So, but that was a new feature, right? So, I invite you to constantly be dissatisfied. It's a wonderful thing. All right. Another one of my favorite quotes from Ed Catmull: always take a chance on better. I read this book a few years ago, and it was a story of, Pixar and all the journey that Ed went through with Steve Jobs, etc. Fascinating book and read. And it's just, they had their trials and tribulations as well. They were a small company growing, etc. And Steve Jobs, I guess, saw a vision in it and whatnot. But and Ed Catmull, who was I think a director or CEO or something like that at the time. But this quote stuck out to me. So in the spirit of constantly being dissatisfied, if you see something, sometimes, hey, maybe we can improve this, make it more readable. Like your job is to always kind of look over code and say, how can I make this better? How can I leave something in a better state than the way I found it? A few years ago, we went to the Japanese conference, and I was fascinated walking down the street in Japan, and I said to my friend, I said, hey, look at that, that's a garbage truck. And it's like, yeah, so what? Look at how friggin' clean it is. It's unbelievably clean, And it's like the subways or the trains, they're all super clean. They don't have that grime or anything. I mean, it's a different experience to walk through a city where there's no trash on the streets, things are clean, orderly. You actually, and I was walking one day through a construction site, and I saw this fellow who had an iPad in his sleeve, like a construction worker, and he saw a piece of dirt on the ground, and he picked it up, and he cleaned it. He put it in the trash. It's like everybody there has got this philosophy of like, we need to take care of this. This is ours, So, all right. My son gets, I'm kind of proud of my son, so that's why I put this up there. He's an A grade student right now, but a couple of grades have gone to B, but I'm working on it for him. But this is the email I get from the school, okay? So in the philosophy of like, hey, how can we make this better? Maybe we can organize it better. It's a little bit hard to read, hard to see the grades. It's on separate lines. It snakes around. I don't like stuff like that. It bothers me. And this is, again, pre-attentive attributes of visualization, right? Calling out in red, I don't know if you can see it in there, but the red highlights the tardies and the absences. And then again, I started to think, how can we make it even better? These things don't mean anything to me, or they don't mean anything to the parents. Why don't we take them out? The name is at the top. Why do we have to repeat the name, right? So now we went from this to this, even more condensed and simplified, right? So, think of things that, drive home the main message of what you're trying to get across in your solutions. This one was interesting. Data validation stuff. So, if you let people type freely in a database, you might end up with some, interesting data. So data validations are important. This one was an interesting one. A friend of mine who works at this store, wow, I get 0% off on tomatoes. That's a great deal. I'll get some. And it's right in front of the watermelon too, so that's an even better thing. So, lack of validation. Whoever put that there, just got the printout and said, yeah, okay, I got to put this, thing over here. Not paying attention to what it says, and obviously it doesn't mean anything. So, Chris Moyer, who's helping the FM Disc group, he has usually curating some content weekly of different things that are happening in the community, spotted this one. And so this kind of struck my eye. It's like, wow, the whole Japanese production, Toyota's Japanese production line was halted due to insufficient disk space. How could that happen? Imagine someone saying, I don't know, I'm just making this up. But imagine someone saying, hey, we got to buy more disk space. Yeah, but it's too expensive. It's only like a few more $1,000s. We need a few more terabytes or whatever. Yeah, no, we can't afford it right now. How much does this cost? How much was that expensive mistake or whatever happened there? Failure to do that. So pay attention to the details, even the smallest details, right? So you go into a solution, and then the client has to move their mouse and click in that field to do a search, right? So change that to, you go to this layout, you put them in the field, they start typing, right? It's like, if you pay attention, if you say to yourself, let me put me in your shoes and let me do your job, you will see this right away. Hey, say, wait a minute, I got to do this all the time. I have to reach over for my mouse and do this, and then I got to click there and then type in something. So, and these are, like even in Wikipedia, you see these people pay attention to it. The first thing you do when you go to Wikipedia, you don't have to move your mouse and click it in the box and start typing. You go to Wikipedia and you start typing. You do search, right? So your solutions have to be as fluid as you can make them so that they can get their job done, get out of the way, right? I went to, I'm not a big Facebook fan, but sometimes I post on Facebook just to talk about different things. And like, this annoys the hell out of me. You get these popovers on top of like, no, I want to select the thing that's behind there. I don't want you to, pre-choose one of those things. And it's like, I see these sometimes where they, even the password dialog thing, and it's like, put the password in, and it's like, get out of my friggin' way, So, all right, some more changes in the way, we work or we do things. COVID changed a lot of stuff for a lot of people, restaurants in particular. So before, you used to go to a restaurant, you walk into a restaurant, you wait to be seated, you wait for the waiter to maybe order some drinks, food, you order the drinks, you order the food, you maybe have to wait for the order to come back and get your order of food, but your food arrives, you eat, you wait for your check, and you pay by credit card, and then you leave. Okay, you actually wait to be processed, and then he brings it back, and you sign it. Don't tell anybody. I always sign as Santa Claus. They never catch me. So, after COVID, restaurant I used to go to in Berkeley, on the way to the restaurant, you can be looking at their menu. You can actually order. Once you get there, you sit down, you order on the app, okay? And as soon as the food is ready, they bring it to you, right? So you didn't wait to be seated. Well, I mean, you might wait to be seated because, it might be busy, whatnot. But if it's not busy, you just grab a table, sit down, you ordered, food comes to you. You don't have to pay. Because it's on your phone, it's your app, you've already paid for the food. If you walk out, you've already paid for it, right? So the whole experience is so different. It's so different. Right? And, from a restaurateur point of view, one might think, hey, I can service more people or whatever. It's much more efficient, So, and some people might argue, well, it's more impersonal, But then again, you can still have that conversation with the waiter, say, hey, can you tell me, this and this or whatever. But in general, the whole process is less waiting. So, all right. The term move fast and break things versus another term I like, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. How many of you heard this term before? Okay, so it's a military term. It comes from the military. And I like to also tell this to my kids because my son sometimes likes to take the glass and pour the milk and the milk splashes everywhere. I say, slow down, because if you slow down, the milk won't splash anywhere. I won't get upset. You don't have to clean it up. You get done sooner. So like imagine, now the milk is there. You're now waiting till you clean it up because I'm hovering over him, telling him, clean it up. And so now he's like taking 1 minute when it could have taken him 10 seconds, right? So slow and deliberate. FileMaker is a double-edged sword. And because in this move fast and break things, you can just add a lot of stuff. You know, you can add very quickly. You can add a lot of table occurrences. You can have an idea and fix something, right? So that can introduce a lot of confusion and technical debt that someone else has to deal with. Okay, so think about that before you move too quickly. Build prototypes. Get something into their hands is so important. I can't tell you how many times I've been in situations where it's like, you know, I talk to the client and say, hey, you know, we have this great idea, you know, we can do this or that, and you have the picture in your mind. They haven't formulated the picture in their mind, maybe because you can't describe it correctly, maybe because they start thinking of their deadlines, you know, they lose interest, whatever. But it's a completely different experience where you walk up to the client and say, here, try it, right? We had a situation where a client was needing to approve things, and they only had 24 hours to approve them. And you know, they had a FileMaker solution, and we thought, these people are on the go, FileMaker Go, on the go. So we gave them a FileMaker Go version of the solution that was optimized for FileMaker Go, and said, here's your approvals that you have to approve within sometimes less than 24 hours, 18 hours, 12 hours. You need to give a response. And we put it in their hands, and they were like, oh my God, we love this. You know, had you described it to them, it would be like, I don't know, maybe, maybe not. Prototypes are a dramatically different experience. So let's move to coding now. I was on LinkedIn and I saw this message: how can you innovate database administration approach to meet customer needs? And I found some answers that people had posted. Automation. Whenever you can, build in automation into any workflow that you need to do, if you can, right? From both sides, from the developer side, from what you do, and from what the client needs to do. Find ways to help them automate. There are different talks that I watch, and this is kind of an inspiration that I got from Charles, some of his presentations. Go into other domains, like the world of Java and the world of C and the world of other people at other conferences, and just sit in on one of those conferences and see what they're dealing with. They deal with the same things we deal with, exact same things, okay? And this guy, I think he's a JavaScript programmer. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember. And then he wrote he did a YouTube video. It's called "How Senior Programmers Actually Write Code," right? And he's talking about some of these main points. I'll summarize them here for you, but it's definitely worth a listen. So first, write code that other members of your team can read and easily understand, right? Oftentimes, you get a great idea, you're moving fast, you're just writing your code, you don't put any comments, and you figured it out, but then you move on because budget is small, you don't have the time, customer wants it done, and you leave it behind, okay? And now there's no comments, and it's just like, someone has to figure it out. So that means write code that will have longevity. Use agreed and approved and agreed upon methods or patterns. And in this thing, he talks about some developer who found a new way to do something. And it said, oh, yeah, this is really cool, and started using it without telling his team, right? And so you don't want surprises like that, because sometimes that code, if it's not vetted and reviewed by the team, it's your individual decision. But what if someone who's more security inclined, or someone who deals with a lot of data, says, hey, did you put that to the stress test of like millions of data points, you know? And all of a sudden it totally falls apart. Now you have to go back in and fix it. And it's like, wow, okay, an embarrassment for you. The other point is, if they don't understand it, they will rebuild it. Trust me, I've seen this a lot of times. Okay, complete your code before you're moving on. So what completing your code means. So again, moving fast, you might do things that at some point you're exploring, and then you would decide, well, I don't need all those repeating fields, and I can actually do this with one table occurrence and all that. So clean up after yourself. Don't leave those things there, okay? They'll just end up being debris that someone else will have to deal with, or you will have to deal with in the future. He points out that refactoring is part of the effort. It's not that you refactor after you do it. Refactoring is part of completing that task. Right? That task is not completed until you've actually decided, okay, I'm done. I've refactored. I've cleaned it up. I put comments in. It's good. Okay, and then in the end, you went down a different approach, etc. And so again, you can remove those repeating fields if you didn't need them. Think of it as a personal brand, right? It's a representation of who you are, like what you leave behind. Right? So it's kind of a reflection on you. This is my code. Maybe this is the way I will be measured or remembered by. And then write documentation for everything. Flowcharts, any documentation you can have, write documentation in your code. So someone else who comes along, maybe even you in a few years, can look at it and say, oh yeah, there's what I'm doing this, and this is what I'm doing that, and this clever thing. Enforce coding standards, document patterns, and don't automatically start using something new unless, again, if you work on your own, you have to check with yourself. But if you work in a team, always get consensus, and and try and get different points of view. I worked on something lately, been working on Inspector 8 and then Brendan and I are working together, and Brendan has an idea and he shares it with me, and then I say, actually, you know what? If we do it this way, and it's like he realizes, like, I never thought of that. That's a good point. Let me try this, And that's another thing that if you have the opportunity, pair program with someone. The result is always more than twice as good, okay? Because you will have your thinking, and the other person will contribute, some of their experience, and they will maybe, ask you questions and say, hey, did you consider this? No, I didn't consider that, and that have that dialogue. I remember I worked once at a company where I was in one cubicle, and one cubicle over, there were these two people. All day long, they were chatting to each other. They were doing design for the interface, and they were chatting with each other, like thinking, oh, no, you can't put the field there. If the field goes there, then it's confusing to the user. It has to be over here. No, but you're right. If the field goes over there, then it's all day long, both of them together. Okay, pair program. Okay. And he has this one idea that you shouldn't, sorry. You shouldn't expose the refactoring work to the client. It should be something that you do on your own. And I kind of disagree with that. I think the client needs to understand what we do as work. They need to understand that it's it's not just something that happens in 5 minutes. Excuse me. I swallowed the water the wrong way. Okay, so be transparent with your managers. Use tools to help you troubleshoot and document as much as possible. Okay, we move on to this this other talk. This talk is actually really fascinating. By this Adam Thornhill person. The business impact of code quality. Amazing talk. Definitely listen to it. Kind of let those concepts sink in from Adam. He has a lot of experience. Definition of technical debt. We trade code quality for delivering a feature fast. The end result, that our code ends up in a worse state than in a long term. Maybe we don't understand the business problem all that well, or maybe the business process changes and we didn't adapt, right? So he's a great talk because he kind of builds this argument towards like finding ways to define like code quality by looking at different metrics in the code. And they deal with a lot of code, more code than what we probably have in FileMaker, millions of lines of codes, et cetera. But he's built some tools to measure that code quality and say, you know, this code base, if you have to work in it, you would move only this fast. But this other code base, you could actually move a lot faster because some attributes of the way those measurements kind of give him insight into the code is well maintained, it's got documentation, or it doesn't have a lot of nested if clauses, or whatever those metrics that he's defined. Another definition of technical debt. Technical debt is code that is more expensive to maintain than it should be. And so when you get buy-in from, you only get buy-in from people who spend the big bucks when they see something like this. Software developers spend 23 to 42% of their work dealing with technical debt and bad code. And what he points out is that, you know, maybe he's working for a startup and they're both working in a car business or a rideshare business, and this rideshare company wants to, you know, outdo this other rideshare company, but their code base is a mess. And he tells the boss, he says, you know what? If we took the time to refactor the code and clean it up, we could actually build this feature and you'd be better competitor to this other company faster than they could get to market. That rings a bell to that boss, right? Because now they're thinking like, oh man, I could deliver this feature faster, right? So healthy code base, you can move 2 times the speed of when implementing a new feature, right? So back to this picture. So, trying to, you know, I remember my mom, and my mom loved me very much, and my mom came from Italy. She lived in a small town in Italy where they had absolutely nothing, and she had a little sister. My mom was 10 years old. Her sister was 4 years old in this small town. My grandfather was at war, and it was my grandmother, my mother, and her sister, and my mom's sister got sick and died at home. And she was 10 years old and her sister was 4 years old. It devastated my mom for the rest of her life. She was no longer, you know, she always felt this feeling like she could have done something, she could have helped. She was psychologically, she never got over it, right? So she was psychologically hard to deal with. And everything they didn't have anything. So my mom saved everything. This is the house, this is the living room of my house and my mom before she passed away. And I tried to help her as much as I could, but it was hard, you know? And so everything that my mom did, she would walk around the house, she would pick up something and say, oh, this, what do I do with this? Okay, this, oh, I save it, I put it over here. Now, that's okay if you only have one thing. But if you have a million things, that's like what, 1 million times 2 seconds, 3 seconds? It's unsustainable. You don't have time in your day-to-day life to clean up or do anything with anything. Because the next morning, oh, this, what do we do with this? Oh, I'll put it over here. Okay, so again, just like that graph that we saw, it's unsustainable. You know, you don't want to end up in a situation where you have so much code. One of the best pieces of advice, I remember Mike Bostock, who's the author of D3, and now he works at Observable. I saw him give a talk with Edward Tufte in San Francisco, maybe about 10, 12 years ago. And Mike Bostock was on there talking about his process and what he does with D3, and he showed some live coding and stuff like this. And he said one thing that always stuck in my mind. He says, remove as much code as you add. Remove as much code as you add. Wow, that's interesting. If I add some code, let me think of where I can reduce some code or remove some code or simplify some code. So again, we're always building, but don't think of always building. Think of removing sometimes, cleaning up, reducing, right? So another great talk, and this I'm going to wrap up soon here, is this person here, Mark Rendell, and he talks about some of the greatest programming mistakes. And sometimes you don't realize it, but we have some pretty big responsibility. We write code that could do stuff, and maybe not as critical as this. But I remember once in Montreal, or actually Shawinigan, Quebec, up in northern Quebec, aluminum smelter. What was it? Alcan aluminum smelter. And it was this friend of mine who was using FileMaker. I don't remember his name, but he says, here, come here, look at this, watch. We were upstairs, third floor. We had a window, and the smelter was down at the bottom. It's like you see all these big aluminum rolls. They probably weighed about 5 tons or whatever, and the smelter is pouring aluminum on one side. The sheets are getting rolled up on the other side. He says, watch this, ready? He clicks a key, one keystroke on his keyboard. He says, watch that. Boom, this thing cut this big sheet of aluminum, just sliced it, and it's like, oh, wow, that's pretty impressive. That's right from your computer, yeah. So it's like, he talks about this one example where back in the 70s or 80s or in the 80s, when they first had CAD software, you had to program the tolerances of what a piece of metal at a certain angle could hold in terms of weight, etc. You had to program that into your code. And then you write your code to, design your building and your roof and all that. They had one example of this company where there was snow on the roof and the whole roof collapsed. And when they did kind of the research behind it, they realized that the tolerances that were built into the way it was built were not correct. And that was because someone had not factored in the lateral weight of the snow going, not just the vertical, but the lateral weight or something like that, right? So he describes it in that talk. And it's like, and then the future CAD software, these things are all built into the software, so to speak. But back then, you had to do that. And that was an oversight. And they tracked that issue, which cost them many millions of dollars, and could have actually probably even hurt some people. Right? Some people were in the building, they might have gotten hurt, whatever. He tracked it down to software. some thing that was just omitted, right? So I think sometimes, depending on what you do as work, make sure that, you're doing the best you can, okay? And so that's our journey. Just to recap, kitchens, cars, and coding. Okay, so inspiration. Hopefully today I've left you with some interesting quotes that you will kind of use in your day-to-day life moving forward. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. Okay, and then there's another one. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Right? Habits. So whatever the habits are that what you get into, what you do, and how you do it. Empathy with your clients and your dealings with your clients, and have respect. I think I saw a concert once with Leonard Cohen a couple of years before he passed away. Usually, you go to concerts, and people clap and say, "Yeah, thank you," whatever. Leonard Cohen, very different person. Leonard Cohen would take a bow. That's his bow. Thank you very much.